Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Added Time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's video. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, if you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button because it helps out the channel as well. But let's get into your questions. Firstly, here from Harris, who asks, what is that one thing you would love to see Lampard change in himself in order to get the best result often as CFC management expects? It's an interesting question. I think naturally my mind goes towards defensive structure, setting up a defense, setting up the structure of the team to help us against transition, set up against transitions better next season. But I think more generally to your question, I feel about sort of experience and intelligence and know-how being as a coach, a head coach for a big team like Chelsea. And that's only going to come through time with him managing more. I think when I hear people criticize Lampard and they bring up sort of naivety within his coaching, and they think it's some sort of groundbreaking discovery, I sort of roll my eyes because I'm like, well, obviously he's going to be naive in certain aspects. He's only in his second year of management. And considering that fact, I think that's why I think his first season as Chelsea's head coach has been so impressive for Chelsea to me, because of all those aspects and because of the fact he's coming up against managers who are better than him in terms of tactical intelligence and being further ahead of him in terms of experience within the game. I look at his matchups against Jose Marina, which I've spoken about on the channel before. I think those are best examples of Frank at his best. He clearly has things to work on, but I think that's about giving him time. Hopefully with another season under his belt in coaching, also getting some really good players within his system next year. I hope that improve. I think defensively, but also I just think it's about time. You know, think of him as a coach in 5 years time. Hopefully he'll be a much better one. That's just obvious based on the time he's going to get. So I think, yeah, defensively, but also I think it's just about being patient to see how long he gets. But of course at Chelsea, we know the pressure, it's so intense, and CFC management expects a lot from him. TK13 asks, Marina has received a lot of stick from Chelsea fans in the past. Do you think that it's about time we praise her for the brilliant business that we are doing this summer, and will this change opinion about her in the fan base? Yes, I really hope it does. I think there's been a perception problem with Marina in the past. I think people have assumed she's involved in like scouting players, deciding, oh yeah, this is the best player for this position in the team. That's not the case. I did a video, you can go and watch a Let's Talk Chelsea episode I did, I believe it was in March, about like Lampard's transfer revolution or something like that, Chelsea transfer revolution. And it was all about a brilliant piece, insightful piece by The Athletic about Chelsea's transfer strategy and the way they go about things. And it was very clear in there that Marina is just about negotiating, you know, the business side of things, getting those deals over the line. And she's amazing at that. She really is. I mean, you wouldn't want to buy a car off her because, you know, a car that's probably worth like 200 quid, she'd make you pay about 10 grand for it probably. She's that good with negotiating with Chelsea. And you've seen this over and over again, not only in terms of the players she's been able to get to the club, the fees, the low fees for players. Ben Chilwell, I think, is going to be another one of those players. Hakim Ziyech, another one of those players as well. But also selling players. Alvaro Morata for 60 million, recouping the money we paid for him originally. Incredible deal, it really was. And I just think, I hope people look at that and go, look at on the business side what she's being tasked to do, because Chelsea, although we're spending a lot of money, want to be a self-sustainable club, and she is the perfect person to make that happen consistently for the club. So yeah, I really hope she gets the praise because she deserves it, to be honest. Tony asks, do you think players like Charlie Musonda and Marco Van Inkel should be given a chance? I think they have something to prove and could be good squad depth for next season. Musonda is a really intriguing one to me. I think fitness is a big issue. Well, fitness is a big issue for both of these players, right? They've both had long-term injuries. I can't see Van Inkel getting a chance at Chelsea, just simply because of the position he plays in. I think midfield, I've said this so often, it's so stacked. I just cannot see him getting a chance. I think he'll probably get a loan, or Chelsea will be looking to sell him now. He's had so many injuries, and I think that could be a thing that halts his progress. But similarly, you could say about Charlie Musonda. The only way I could see Charlie Musonda is because of Chelsea's maybe lack of depth in wide areas. You think about it, you know, Willian and Pedro leaving, there is a sense Chelsea could go out and buy a wide player, but if Musonda's ready, Frank could give him an opportunity as well. I think it's really difficult for both players. I think fitness is going to be the thing that's the big question mark over their heads. If they cannot have long-term fitness, Chelsea aren't going to be able to play them that much. And I think, you know, a coach at Chelsea isn't going to be able to rely upon them to give them opportunities to then prove themselves, to then break into the first team. I think it's very difficult. I'd go with Musonda just based on the position he plays, but I think both of them at the moment, it's hard to see them breaking into the first team, in my opinion. Brian New 127 asks, given that Timo Werner is not a lone striker, he will most likely play alongside Tammy Abraham as a left winger in 4-3-3. How Lampard is going to play Pulisic, as he is very important to our team. I think in the case of Timo Werner, it's very hard to predict what Lampard's first 11 is going to look like. I know a lot of you have been asking me to make one of those videos. It's just so hard because of the congested nature of pre-season, the fitness of certain players. I think once we get to that Brighton game, of course, we're going to get some idea. I really hope we have some sort of pre-season for Chelsea, you know, some sort of friendly, 1 or 2 friendlies maybe, to see how Frank is shaping up the team. I think it'd be really exciting to look at that. But in the case of Timo Werner, I think at the moment Frank has that excuse with Pulisic's injury to maybe play him out wide first with Tammy or Giroud up top. I just think maybe adapting to the Premier League, which a lot of these players are going to have to do. Ziyech is the same, Werner, especially the type of striker Werner is. He's not a Diego Costa. I think his attributes and physicality really isn't as suited to the Premier League as maybe a Diego was. So I think maybe there'd be a little bit more of sort of getting used to the Premier League for Timo Werner. So maybe playing him out wide in the first few weeks while Pulisic is getting back to fitness may help him sort of get used to the pace and the intensity of the Premier League, whilst a Giroud or a Tammy could stay up top and deal with the physical challenge. Now, I think if that second week against Liverpool, Virgil van Dijk, I'd love to see like Olivier Giroud up against Virgil van Dijk. I think he can handle the physicality of that, but maybe Timo plays out wide. I think Pulisic is a big question mark as well, because he has become so integral to Chelsea. You do not want to see a Chelsea team without him in it currently when he's fit, because he is so good at the moment. And I think Frank will be forced to play Pulisic somewhere because he has to, because Pulisic is outstanding for Chelsea. He really has been. He's a game changer, and you want those type of players in the Chelsea team. And I think he's very much going to dominate that left side. So there were talks months back when we signed Werner that, oh, you know, Werner will maybe play on the left for the majority of the time. I don't think that's going to be the case, because I think Pulisic will just make it impossible for Frank Lampard to leave him out, really. So I think Werner eventually will be competing for that lone striker, but you maybe see in the time that he adapts and gets used to playing for Chelsea in the Premier League, he may start out wide, in my opinion. Michael asked, do you think Frank should try using Christensen as a 6 at the base of a midfield 3? His shortcomings as a central defender could be utilised to transform his game. He can still read the game well defensively and has shown on many occasions he's a good passer. Passing is one of his best attributes, it really is, and I could understand sort of that mindset of sort of thinking that, you know, he maybe isn't as strong in the Premier League as a centre-back, which I believe you move him into sort of that central midfield role, he could do a lot of good. I mean, David Luiz, remember there was a short period of time under Jose Mourinho where he did that. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's an interesting shout, because you're sort of looking at rotation-wise for N'Golo Kante. If Frank is really set on having Kante at the base of a midfield 3 and he gets injured, or you want to rotate him because of the amount of games Chelsea's going to have to play, I wouldn't be against trying it, because I do think Christensen does read the game well. I think if the ball's on the floor, this is the whole thing with Christensen, if the ball's on the floor, and he, especially I think in wide areas, I think Christensen really excels against fast strikers. I think he's deceptively quick as well. So potentially in that area, he could really form into a good player. That could be the thing that potentially transforms his whole career. You know, maybe he isn't suited to being a centre-back in the Premier League. I mean, he has played a lot of his career there now, so I think it's a little bit different to an Ethan Ampadu situation, where Ampadu still is at that age where he's developing, probably finding out his best position. Christensen has spent so long playing in that position for Chelsea now and playing in his career there. But I wouldn't mind seeing it, especially if we don't get another sort of central midfielder this summer to play in that role, and maybe Ampadu eventually goes out on loan or something like that. I wouldn't mind seeing it. I think it's a really good shout, to be honest. Minash asked, do you think Havertz will play as an 8 or a 10? That I think all depends on formation, I think, as well. 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. I think I've heard some shouts he could be playing out wide to begin with, a bit like I was saying with Timo Werner. Maybe you start Havertz a little bit wider to get him used to the Premier League, especially if you want to keep a player like Kovacic, for instance, in the midfield. How's that's going to shape up with Mason Mount potentially as well? I think eventually that will be his primary role, what we've seen for him at Leverkusen. I think, you know, how intelligent he is to move into those pockets of space between striker and sort of midfield. I think that's a key ingredient for Chelsea next season, maybe breaking down low blocks, getting more creative, getting more shots on goal as well, and chance creation. I think that's where you'll see Kai Havertz eventually. I would go more an 8, because I think Frank wants to play a 4-3-3 maybe. You know, there's two sort of bombing, sort of free attacking 8s I think that you've seen before, Mason Mount, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I think in that sort of role for me, I think maybe way back we heard that Frank wanted to play a 4-2-3-1, but in truth, he hasn't played it as much recently. If he does return to that role, then you're sort of asking, okay, who plays out that number 10? You know, would Havertz then have to move a little bit deeper? I'm not entirely sure. I think that 4-3-3 may be the way to go for Frank Lampard, and then I think it will be an 8 type of situation, probably leaning to the right of midfield. Callum Jack asks, would you take Alaba at Chelsea? If he's not going to sign a new contract, I feel like maybe we should go in for him. He's very versatile, and I would say he's world class. Of course, now Champions League winner as well after last night. I do agree he's a class player. I just think based on everything I've read about David Alaba, and as well now on the brink of signing Ben Chilwell, I just cannot see it happening. Every time there's a little bit of news about Alaba or a little bit of rumour that he may be open to coming to the Premier League, it's instantly shut down by very reliable people. That may change. I just cannot see it happening, to be honest. Especially if we're on the brink of signing Thiago Silva as well. I just think that sort of fills that role of experience. And I think Alaba probably won't be moving to Chelsea. He may sign a new contract there. He may move somewhere else. But every time I hear something about Alaba, it's quickly shut down. So that's sort of in my mind. I think that's probably not going to happen in my opinion, even though I think he's a good player. Manhandled CFC asks, if Thiago Silva signs, who is the centre-back partner next season, looks very likely that Thiago Silva signs. I mean, it may be as I'm recording, it gets confirmed he's a Chelsea player, but naturally, and I think majority of people will instantly say Kurt Zouma, just based on the form of our centre-backs, but I think if Tomori was to stay, I talked a bit about Tomori a couple of days ago in Let's Talk Chelsea. If Tomori stays, I think this could be brilliant for Kayo Tomori. Him and Thiago Silva, I think, could form a really good partnership, and just what he could learn, Tomori, from a player like Thiago Silva, the wealth of experience that Silva has within his career. I think you could definitely form a good partnership, having someone like Tomori who's very good at recovery tackles and maybe sort of a more experienced head back there. I think maturity is the one thing for me with Thiago Silva. I think it's just generally, I know this isn't really answering your question straight away, but I think that the sense of, you know, bringing in someone like Thiago Silva, something we've lacked last season, something we've lacked since JT left basically, is danger awareness. And I hope that's something Thiago Silva, with his intelligence and with his age, can bring to Chelsea's defence. So I think potentially what you'd see is Thiago Silva, even if he's not starting week in, week out because of his age and fitness and because of the congested nature of fixtures, I think Thiago Silva, and I'd like to see one of Fikayo Tomori or Kurt Zouma alongside him. Maybe Zouma just based on fitness and based on who's best in form currently for Chelsea, but yeah, those are the two I'd go for instantly. And lastly, Toffee Toff asks, I feel like we haven't heard much about any replacements for Kepa. Do you think he'll remain at Chelsea next season with an improved backline, or do we still need a replacement in goal? I spoke about Kepa last week, an article from The Athletic about his numbers, which are just horrible, to be honest. I definitely suggest if you haven't seen that video, please go and watch it, because I really dive into the numbers and it just shows you how poor he's been this season. I still think it's a point of no return for Kepa. I just think the difficulty is getting him out the club this season. It's just so difficult, and it's impossible to sell this guy at the moment in the current market, in the current climate of COVID, and clubs not being really able to spend that much or confident enough to spend that amount of money. It's very different to the situation Chelsea were in with the transfer ban last year. I think it's a difficult thing. I mean, once these deals of like Silva, Havertz and Chilwell get over the line, we hope this week, then I think you'll be maybe looking at a goalkeeper, and it depends on what goalkeeper. I've spoken about a lot of targets, maybe a Nick Pope type of player, maybe an older head to bring in alongside Willy Caballero. It's a position Chelsea can't go without a strengthening for me. Kepa may turn out to be a brilliant goalkeeper later down in his career, but I think it's just past the point of no return. I think the lack of trust from Lampard, the lack of trust from his defenders, the lack of trust from supporters towards him, I just cannot see him staying any longer. It's just about where he goes, which I think will probably be Spain, in my opinion. But it's definitely going to be the biggest challenge this season for Marina and for Chelsea to get Kepa a new club for next season, really. But that is it for this edition of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.